We need to stop attaching our identity to a weight class. However, that is much easier said than done. So in this video, I am going to go through some bits of advice around how you can determine if it is time for you to move up a weight class or not. And I think one thing I'd like to preface this and say is nothing has to be permanent. Moving weight classes can feel like such an overwhelming decision, and it almost feels like once you make that decision to go up, you haven't got the option to come back down. And that is absolutely not the choice, because I think within powerlifting, there is very much this mindset of all or nothing. If you're a 76 kilo female powerlifter and you make the decision to move up to the 84 class, it's almost like there's this assumption that you have to be 84, 85, 86 kilos to do that. But that's not true. There is no reason why you couldn't enter a meet at 79 kilograms and basically just not cut and see how you find it. But we'll go more into that later on. First things first, if you are a new powerlifter, you do not need to fill out your weight class or cut to make a weight class. Whatever your body weight sits at naturally is where you should be entering your powerlifting meets. If you walk around at 67 kilograms as a female powerlifter, just enter as an under 69. It is really common for powerlifters to see the weight classes when they first start and automatically attach themselves to that one below where they sit. So if you walk around at 65 kilograms, for example, you're probably going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be a 63 kilo powerlifter. Especially if you look into powerlifting, you see these elite level lifters who in the 63 kilogram class, a lot of them will be walking around about 65 kilos during their like off-season phase or even just pre-cutting for comp. You don't need to do that if you're new. That's what the top 1% are doing. You don't need to do that. If you are a new powerlifter, just turn up to your meets and weigh what you weigh. It'll allow you to be, one, a lot more relaxed turning up to the competition because you don't have to fear what you're going to weigh in at. Two, you can have breakfast as normal, which is lovely to be able to do before weighing in. You can drink plenty of fluid before weighing in, and you can just be more relaxed around the competition. And this is advice that I would give to anyone in their first few competitions, or to be honest, unless you're a competitive powerlifter, you probably can just get away with walking in at whatever your body weight sits at. You don't need to force yourself to fill out a weight class or cut into a weight class. Second bit of advice is if you are struggling to maintain within cutting range of your weight class, so if you're having to go into a large caloric deficit in order to be within cutting range of your weight class, and by cutting range, I mean acute cutting, so gut cut, water cut, that kind of thing, it's probably worth considering moving up because you don't want to have to be in a large caloric deficit during your prep when you want to be recovering and feeling strong. Third piece of advice is if your progress has stalled and you're already on top of the other variables such as sleep, hydration, your diet is overall like good quality foods, you're fueling your sessions as much as you can, it could just be that you need to look at gaining weight, gaining muscle mass, allowing yourself to eat in a caloric surplus to allow your lifts to start trending upwards again. If you are struggling to replicate your training numbers on the platform after you have cut into the class, that is also a sign that it might be worth moving up. So providing you've done your weight cut correctly, you've recomped correctly, if you are just struggling to perform at the level you should be on the platform, if you look at your training data, you look at your trends in training, and you're just falling short from meet to meet after this cut and this recomp, it's probably worth trying moving up. If making weight has become a struggle for you, so if you have to go through these death cuts in order to make your weight class, if you're sitting in a sauna for hours to sweat off the last kilo or 2 kilos, if you're having to spit every time you go to weigh in, after already doing a water load, a gut cut, whatever else you have to do, if you are having to do these death cuts, and not being funny, they're going to make you miserable, unless you are within the top 1% of your weight class, it is probably not worth it. And you might as well try moving up. And I'm going to go to the trying part in a moment. This one I think is a very big one, injury. I think a lot of people do ignore this one. So if you are repeatedly getting beaten up or injured and just not recovering how you should be, unless it's because your training is just off and you're completely overworking, your body is probably crying out for more calories and to allow it to, one, grow, and two, have the extra food to allow you to recover more. Food helps our recovery, and I think that's something people often forget. Allowing yourself to eat more will allow your body to recover more. And when you are repeatedly dealing with injury, it can really get you bogged down, and it can also make you fall out of love with the sport, when often the solution is simply to allow your body to gain weight, stop being in this restrictive cycle, and let your body have the fuel that it's craving. These are just a few examples of ways I think you can determine if it's time for you to move up a weight class or not. Honestly, I think a big thing here is also enjoyment. It is definitely a thing within powerlifting where we think we all have to be these really competitive, super serious lifters. And obviously, if you want to take it seriously, that's a fantastic thing. But taking it seriously doesn't mean you have to do the serious cuts into competition. You can turn up to competition at whatever body weight you weigh and just enjoy it. You don't have to be at one end or the other of your weight class. You can just show up at your normal weight and just compete and have fun. And one thing I would definitely say is if you are at a point where you're unsure if moving up would be beneficial or not, just try doing a local low pressure meet in the weight class above and just see how you feel competing without a cut. For example, for myself, if I was ever unsure whether staying at 84 wasn't going to be good for me long term, I would just enter a meet as an 84 plus, walk in at 86 kilos, so basically just pre-cut, eat breakfast before weigh-in, have plenty of fluid before weigh-in, and see how I perform. If my performance has a good uptick, then it's probably worth considering allowing myself to compete at a heavier body weight or allowing myself to grow a little bit more. Now, as an 84 lifter, I do think that choice is a little bit different simply because of the next weight category up, depending on your competitiveness level. If you aren't an overly competitive lifter, and by that again, I mean in the top percent or chasing to be in that top percent, it doesn't really matter what you weigh or what class you compete in. It's all about you. And people don't like people saying this, but it is you versus you, and you're better off just going in wherever you're going to be the strongest and put up the best total for yourself. I think something else that has to come into this decision as well is health. I think this happens more on the male side than on the female side, but often it is this perception of you have to eat up and you have to fill your weight class and you have to allow yourself to get bigger, to get stronger, which isn't a flawed theory. You do have to allow yourself to get bigger, to get stronger, because muscle mass is going to help us be a stronger lifter. If you look at the lifters at the top, they have a lot of muscle mass. It's because that is what makes them stronger. And you'll also notice that they generally have a good body composition. They're fairly low body fat, obviously within a healthy range. Now, you don't have to just eat and fill your weight class and force feed yourself to fill your weight class. You can do it slowly and steadily and just gradually gain that muscle mass and do it in a healthy way, because it goes from one extreme to the other. Undereating will often lead to injuries. Overeating will often affect our recovery as well, potentially not so much on the injury prone side, but if you are force feeding yourself and overeating, you're going to feel sluggish, your body's not going to be moving as healthily or with much ease, and you are probably going to be hindering your recovery in that sense as well. So I think it has to be said from both angles. However, generally speaking, we are in a strength sport, and in order to get stronger, we have to allow ourselves to get bigger. Now, your body composition is also a telltale sign of whether or not it's time to move up a weight class. If you are sitting at the top end of your weight class, but you do have quite a lot of excess body fat, which I want to preface this and say, not all of us are going to be super lean at our strongest. Most of us are going to probably be stronger with a bit of body fat on us, particularly on the female side, where females generally do have a higher body fat percentage than men anyway. But I'm not saying you have to be super lean before you can move up a weight class. But if you do have a lot of excess body fat, cutting down a weight class also might not be a bad thing, simply because you're possibly going to be a healthier individual by doing that, which will allow your recovery to increase and be better. That's obviously a much more in-depth conversation, a very individualized thing to consider. And that's not what I'm going to go into in this video. I just wanted to give some bits of information and thoughts to just anyone that's not sure if it's time for them to move up a weight class. And just know that you don't have to commit to moving up fully. You can just go into a comp at a slightly heavier body weight, allow yourself to gain a couple of kilos, see how you feel, because that's not going to be too hard to lose if you do decide that actually you want to go back down. But don't be afraid to try moving up. I think a really big thing within this sport is people fear moving up a weight class because they feel like that's then an even higher total that they're going to be chasing in order to be competitive, because obviously as the weight classes go up, generally the lifts go up and the totals go up, but you are quite often going to be limiting your own potential by thinking like that, because you might find that actually moving up a weight class really helps to uptick your performance and actually gets you to that competitive level within that higher weight class quicker than you were going to get to that competitive level by holding yourself back, increasing your injury risk and other things in that lower class. Hopefully that makes sense. Obviously, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will be sure to respond. If you've enjoyed this video though, please do give it a like, please subscribe. I'm going to be making more videos similar to this going forward. This is the reason I started this YouTube channel and it's something I've massively slacked on, but I will be doing more of this from now on. And if there's any specific topics that you would like me to talk through, please do let me know. I am a powerlifting coach, I am a nutrition coach. I can talk on both of those areas. I'm also an athlete, so if you want more to do with the athlete side, please also ask as well. But thank you if you've made it to the end. I really appreciate it and I will see you in the next one.